that working?
Yeah, that's it, right.
We will what meant to about the case.
Well, we know.
Start just by sort of asking what you're up to. I want to talk to you a little bit about politics, the UKIP stuff, all of that. Are we happy?
Yeah.
Do you want me to clap?
Clap,
Yeah.
please, mate.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's in shot for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, just give it a
Yeah,
sec. I'll
that's in
zoom
shot.
in, Jace. So, yeah.
Okay. Happy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're going to call you Tommy Robinson throughout this. Fine? Yeah?
Yep.
What have you been up to since we saw you come out of prison?
Not a lot, to be honest. I'm just waiting because I have another trial now on Thursday at the Old Bailey where they're going to attempt to send me back to prison. I've been trying to get my head straight. I spent months on solitary confinement, months on what I would say is torture, mental torture at the hands of the state. Every law they could have broke, they broke.
The prisons say you weren't in solitary confinement. They're wrong about that. They say
Yeah.
the prison service, Mr. Jackson Lennon, was treated with the same fairness we aim to show all prisoners. He had access to visits,
Do you have the
television
name of who
showers.
said that? Do you have that?
It's the prison service. It's a statement.
Absolute lie.
Totally false to say he was held in solitary confinement.
From the minute I landed in Unedited prison, I saw no other prisoners. I was refused, which you've seen the statement online, which clearly says I will not be allowed to integrate or mix, I will not be allowed to work. Just a bit so you understand, when people land in prison, they get out of their cell about 8 o'clock in the morning and they get locked up at 6 o'clock in the evening. They work, they play football, they play computers, they live a normal life.
Yeah, so you weren't allowed to do that.
I wasn't allowed out of my cell once. I spent 23 and a half hours a day locked in my cell.
So this statement from the prison service is completely wrong.
That statement is completely
They
lie.
said you were in a separation unit for 48 hours whilst through an assessment made.
Complete lie, and I have the evidence to prove that's a lie from my legal letters from my lawyers to the prison. I did not see one other prisoner. I was not against my wishes. I wanted to come out of my cell. I wasn't allowed out of my cell. So from the minute I got put in prison to the minute I got out of Unedited prison, I saw no one, and that was done on purpose because I was moved. You're a journalist, who would move me, being who I am, Tommy Robinson, from the lowest Muslim population prison in the country, one of them, Hull, to the highest CCAT Muslim population in Britain? Why do you think that would be done?
Why do you think it was done if that was done? Well, and
Well,
I can't prove whether it was done or not. But
We can prove. You know what?
I don't know the Muslim population of that.
Okay, well I'll
prison.
tell you. You know I was moved to Unedited. Unedited is the highest Muslim population of any CCAT prison in the country. Why do you think that was done? What do you think? And when I walked out,
I'm not here to answer questions.
Well,
to be fair, but
when I come out of prison, you said to me, "Do you have any regrets?" You saw me when I come out of prison, didn't you? I was 3 stone lighter than I was when I went in.
Yeah.
Okay. You've read the High Court order that said the case against me is flawed. You've read that?
Of course, yeah.
So instead of coming and finding me as I walk out of prison and asking if I have regrets, have you been to find Judge Marson, the man who illegally and unlawfully imprisoned me, who saw me no rights?
Well, he didn't go through the correct process, and then there was another process which said that process needed to be go through properly, and that court,
no, we have a system in the country
Yeah.
where you go before a court, you get given rights,
Yeah.
you're given a chance to speak to your solicitors, you get asked if you're guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
He done none of that. He had a kangaroo court in Britain in 2018, and as a media journalist, have you gone and asked him why?
What we did do is we covered quite extensively the campaign that was making and highlighting these points, Raheem Kassid and others who were making these points during the time that you were in prison. And I wanted to know from you how you felt.
I'll tell you how I felt
about that campaign that was building while you were behind bars.
Can I ask you, as the journalist who run those news stories, you labelled everyone who come to those demonstrations from my
label anybody.
Excuse me, far right protesters. I've watched it this morning.
Mm.
I'm going to put it in my video.
Yeah.
I watched it. Far right protesters. Can you explain to me how, if someone watches what I was reporting on, where I went out my way to make sure I didn't break any laws outside that court, and I was reporting on the fact.
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
But I wanted to know what your view was on these.
I have to know, and so do the people who 20,000 people, I'd say, attended that demonstration.
Which demonstration?
The first one to free me, the second one to free me.
I didn't personally cover it, so I can't respond.
Far right protesters.
Yeah, I can't respond.
Every time Sky, who we're working for, this is whose studio we're in.
Yeah.
Far right protesters. I saw you. I watched a video this morning with you, where you're talking, and it says
I wasn't reporting on the Free Tommy Robinson account. I didn't do that. I didn't do that. No.
Okay, were they far right protesters?
I don't know. I wasn't there, and I wasn't talking to them, and I wasn't getting their views and opinions.
So you've not took part in any news piece where the people who were supporting me were labelled far-right protesters?
Not on the Free Tommy campaign, no. I just want to get your view on the 630,000 signatures that now have
the reason why, look, if I'm giving you if it seems like I'm giving you a hard time.
No, I just,
the
I'm
reason why
supposed to be
is,
interviewing you, Tommy. That's what we're here to do.
I'll
We're
explain,
here to get your views.
I'll explain,
and I am just a conduit.
I'll explain to you that.
I mean, I'll challenge them, but I'm not.
I'll explain to you that your reporting, Channel 4, BBC, the mainstream media's reporting, is part of the reason why 630,000 people would have signed a petition. It's part of the reason why the distrust. If you look at the European Parliament's trust in media, where they've done a survey of all European countries, Britain is the least trusted media. The company you work for, the public don't trust or believe you. When you do a hit piece after
I know that. I've spoken to some people who don't believe.
But no. In the
of
whole
course.
of Europe, but what I'm trying to explain to you is the reason why. The reason why, when 20,000 people march because they see an injustice happen, they see a court act like a kangaroo court, like it should be China. They witness that, and then all of the mainstream media come out and support that court's action, even though it's been proven to be unflawed.
We challenge what people are saying, as we do in any report, as we do on a report on Labour or the government. We challenge.
No, you didn't challenge what the judge done. None of you did. Not one mainstream media outlet, not one of you went and got the transcripts from that court case. None of you did. None of you went and just it would have took 10 minutes research. You'd have gone and got the report. You'd have got the transcripts from the court case, and you'd have seen the illegalities of what happened in that court. But rather than do that, all of you stood there and said, "This is who Tommy Robinson is. He's a far right bigot, and this is why he deserves to be in jail."
I just want to get you to sort of like speak to me a little bit about all of this and the impact it's having on you. Can you just talk me through, the impact it has had on your family of being in prison?
Well, I went to work that day. Okay, I went to work. This is what I do. I'm a journalist, and I cover reports, and I raise awareness about issues that I don't think the mainstream media are usually willing to talk about. So I went to work that day, and I was taken off the street, and I was due to be picking up my daughter from her school trip, who I hadn't seen for a week, and I was in prison for 30 months. And that was a shock to me. But the biggest shock was when I was moved from the safety of Hull prison to the unsafety of Unedited prison, and I was held in solitary confinement. There can be no argument about it. I saw no one else. I was locked in my cell for 23.5 hours a day. Whilst I was locked in my cell, the police visited my wife's house. They told her she's going to get attacked with acid. They visited my mum's house, told her she's going to get attacked with acid. They refused. The only time I was allowed out of my cell was at a time when my children and my wife were at work. My children were at school. So I was refused the opportunity to talk to my family. Yeah. They held my letters back. They refused to send letters to my wife. All of these things were uncalled for, unjust, illegal, and it's 2018 in Britain. This is not.
What's your wife think of all this?
Was my wife?
Does she tell you just to give it up?
I'll be honest. I said to my wife, because I now face a bit of a dilemma on Thursday at the Old Bailey, where I'm being told that, or I've been told, I've gone through multiple legal teams, that I should basically cut a deal and plead guilty and apologise, and then I'll get time served.
Can't really use that answer, Tommy, because it's your legal advice.
Okay, well the options I have.
I'm just asking what your wife makes of the Tommy Robinson.
Well, I explained to my wife on this issue. I said that if I don't do this, I'm going back to prison. And her answer was, "I'll still be here when you get out." So, which is what I needed to know. And I'll be honest, when I landed in prison, in Hull prison, the first phone call I made was they give you £1 credit. So I rang my wife and I asked her, "Have you had enough yet?" Have you had enough yet? Because obviously,
what did she say?
She just couldn't believe what happened again. And it's mainly it's my children. I missed two of their birthdays.
And you've got 3 kids?
I've got 3 children now.
And they're quite young?
They're quite young, yeah.
So what do they make of it all? Do they know what's going on? Do they know who Tommy Robinson is?
They've witnessed things, unfortunately, by the police. For example, a day out I had my children in Cambridge, where the police come and told me I had to leave the city, and they persisted, and you can watch the video, anyone can watch the video online. My children have witnessed these things now, so they know what I do. I kept them shielded from a lot, but now they know what I do. So when I've landed in prison, they've obviously watched the response to it as well. they've seen the response to it. They've seen the videos of.
Do they know that there are people, and you can blame the media, you can blame me, or you can blame some of the things that you said, that you are hated and loathed amongst certain people?
See that.
Do they worry about that? Do they get a sense of that?
Do you know what they see? And this is the truth. And in fact, I'll challenge you to come and spend a day with me in a working class town, anywhere you want. Yeah.
Happy.
And as we walk around, you'll see the reaction I get, and that's the same reaction my children see. Everyone shakes my hand. Everyone. I'm not. This myth that I'm the most hated man in Britain is absolutely absurd. It's because I don't
But
get.
you know, you
obviously,
the death threats.
Two days ago, I can show you the video. In fact, 2 days ago, I was with my children in Luton. I pulled up at a petrol station. My wife went in. One young Muslim come past my car, giving me the gun fingers, and then he got in his car and they pulled up next to me. And I don't want my children to witness things like that. But I got out of the car. I videoed it. But I also said it's a lesson to my children. And I sat and spoke to my children afterwards to say that, because I got out of my car and said, what's the problem? And I'm not going to watch. I'm not going to be intimidated.
Could you walk away from it? I mean, is that an option?
The police in 2010 offered me and Kevin new identities, witness protection programs, because of the threats against us. Why would I walk away? See, I know what I'm saying is right. I love my country. I love my children. In fact, the one difficult letter I had to write in prison was letters to my children in case I didn't make it out of prison, because I generally didn't believe I would. When they moved me to Hull, when they moved me to the highest Muslim population, there can be no other answer for that, other than I've been locked in cells in rooms before in prison when I lost all my teeth by prison guards and left to be beaten by Muslims. So I wrote letters to my children to explain to them the reason I do everything I do is because I love them, and this is far, far bigger than my children. This is the entire next generation of children in this country. We are handing them, it's our duty, it's my duty as an Englishman, it's our duty to hand down a safe and prosperous Britain to the next generation. No one can look around them and say that our country is becoming more safe and more prosperous. Freedom of speech is disappearing. Everyone's living in fear. People are scared to talk. It reminisces, it's like Eastern Bloc. And I truthfully believe, I truthfully, which is the conversation I have with my wife, I truthfully believe that unless we tackle this problem now, whilst we still have a possibility of dealing with it, if we wait 10 or 15 years and the demographical change to this country with the Islamic community, we won't be able to. And these are just statistics. It's like,
okay. Well, before we go, I just want to move on to politics. I mean, I hear you want to join UKIP. Is that the case? You want to be a UKIP member?
I'd join UKIP, yes. Why? Because I've listened to Jared Batten, I've met Jared Batten, and it's the first politician that I've listened to that I thought, do you know what, I'd get out and vote for him. Yeah. And I've never voted. Neither of us, anyone I know.
So what would you do in UKIP?
I'd join UKIP, that's all I've said I'd do. I haven't said I wanted a position within UKIP, I just said I'd join UKIP as a member.
Well, that's step one, but is there a step two? Is there become an MP?
I don't plan to be an MP. I haven't planned anything like that. I plan to continue doing the work I do. I think that my position and the power that I have is and people are listening.
Well, this is the point, isn't it? Kind of, this is the moment of truth, really, because you've been out, you've done what you've done on the streets, you've led the EDL, you've set that up, you've come out of prison with over 600,000 signatures behind your name. You've got websites and people who are supporting you. You can pull a crowd. What do you do with that?
Oh, I think that isn't necessarily about Tommy Robinson. I think that you're all missing something huge here.
You've got your brand.
Okay, well, forget that movement.
It's quite significant.
It's a movement.
Yeah.
Donald Trump got elected off the back of a movement. Yeah. It's a movement of people who feel they're not being listened to, they're not being heard, their free speech is being taken away, and they're looking around their communities and thinking this isn't good. We don't feel safe. The facts. These are facts about. So what
I'm trying to get at is you're known as a rabble rouser.
I'd love to no, only by yourself. So I'm not. Only by the media.
But you're known as a rabble rouser
by the media. I'm falsely labelled
because of what you've done in the past.
Which is what
been elected for. inciting violence. for
I've never
example?
incited violence. I've never been convicted for inciting violence. I've never even been arrested for anything to do with racism, extremism, any of those things to do with racial things. I've never even had an arrest for it, ever, in my life. So I've not been convicted for anything like that. What I do is I speak openly and honestly, and I tell the truth. Now, because I tell the truth, you'll call the truth rabble rousing. If I sit
I'm
in
talking
now,
about drawing out crowds of people onto the street, some of whom are violent, some of whom behave violently.
what's that got to do with?
Well, you're amongst them.
I'm amongst them.
Yeah.
It's a guilt by association.
Well, and also leadership.
Okay, so some people in Sky News who work for Sky have been arrested for paedophilia. Does that mean you guilt by association?
I've no idea if that's true, but
okay,
that's just
but it
they
is.
just pluck that out of the air.
But
I've no idea if that's true. You
giving-
can't do
I'm
things
giving
like
you-
that.
I'm
Tommy.
giving
You
you that
can't
exa-
just say things
I'm
like
giving you that
But
example.
it's not an
Does that
example
mean-
because you just plucked it out of the air.
Look,
It's
I'm not
there's
being
no
violent.
truth
So
to
you
it.
can't
There's no truth
you
to
can't
it.
say I've been. If I talk at a demonstration, it's like if I talk at a demonstration and there's some trouble at a demonstration. I watched your report actually. I watched the Sky News report earlier before I come in here, and what it had far right protesters, and it was all the people who were supporting me, and then it had the anti-fascists. The anti-fascists who all turned up wearing balaclava.
You were talking about the football.
No, I'm not on about.
Those
No, I'm not on about.
Oh
that,
no, not that one.
I'm not on about. I'm on about, and then it had pictures of lots of people wearing balaclavas, which were the
Right.
anti-fascists. They're not labelled as violent far left extremists, which is what they are. They attack everyone.
Well, if they're wearing balaclavas, then obviously they're trying to hide something.
But they're not labelled ever as that. They're
I
labelled as
don't-
anti.
Again, you're
Here
talking
come
about
you-
a report. I don't know, but what I'm trying to get to is this moment of truth. Do you go from that, whether it's inaccurate or not? Do you go from trying to change that image?
Do I go from speaking?
And what do you do?
All I will
wanna
continue
know
to
is
do.
what
All
you're
I will
gonna do.
continue to do is speak openly and speak honestly. Now, I do believe that the movement.
Would you set up something like the English Defence League again? Is that on the cards? And if you were, would you call it that?
No, I have no plans to do that. No, I think that was needed at the time. I think that if you look at the arrest rate for what I can only call rape gangs, not grooming gangs, if you look at the arrest rate, that when the English Defence League formed, within 12 months, the police started making arrests. I think that it served its purpose. I left the English Defence League because I was fed up of battling elements within it who didn't agree.
So what differentiates you from the far right?
I'll put that question back to you. What is it I've ever said or done that makes me far right?
Well, you don't want to continue the building of mosques. You correct?
I temporarily want to halt on
Isn't
the
that a
building of mosques.
restriction on religion? Isn't that a restriction on people's freedom to worship?
Not if we're trying to sort out a problem. We have a huge problem here where the majority of our mosques are funded by Saudi Arabia, Iran or Qatar.
Yeah.
The madrasas are similar, it's in a similar sense. We don't know what's being preached in them, we don't know what's being taught in them. Every time we see an undercover investigation, every single time, we see hatred, we see anti-democratic views, anti-Semitic views,
those might be because they're
homophobic
targeted
views.
where someone has warned people about that kind of thing.
No, they're not.
Look,
No.
we know that there's a small portion of that.
Okay, so if I temporarily if I want to halt the building of mosques in the UK, does that make me far right?
Do you want to bring in a travel ban, like a sort of Trump-style travel ban?
I believe we should have a proper border control. Yes, I believe we should have real borders where people are brought into our country on merit.
Should we ban people coming from certain Muslim countries?
Well, what Donald Trump actually done was he banned people coming from failed states. So the countries he wanted to ban.
Is that fair?
Yes, it is fair, completely fair. In fact, if Europe would have had a Donald Trump style travel ban, we would have 248 less people who have been murdered and butchered by refugees in the last 2 years. That's a fact. That's a fact. So, would you rather? I think our job in this country should be to protect the citizens of this country. Yeah. We're not protecting them by letting the 4 refugees who went on a massacre in Paris. One refugee who was brought in as a child into this country who blew up a train recently, in the last 12 months. He set off a bomb. He was a refugee.
Who blew up a train in this country?
Yes, he set off a bomb. Yeah.
Which train?
He didn't kill anyone. He set off a bomb. It was a failed one, and he was living with foster parents.
You mean the Palmer's Green?
The Palmer's Green bombing. He was a refugee. If we would have had a Donald Trump style ban, he would not be here. If we'd have a Donald Trump style ban, then the refugee who drove a lorry over people in Berlin. There's multiple refugees. In fact, if you just want to look at refugee rapes, there was 5 refugees who raped a girl in.
But there's
Kent.
look. There's rapes throughout society. There's you know, if you look at the crime statistics, there's an awful lot of rapes, there's a lot of murders.
No,
I'm sure that
actually,
you can pick that some of them have
if you
been
look-
done by refugees.
If you look at the crime statistics, then almost over 90% of the rapes in Sweden have been from immigrants. These are facts.
Where's your source for that?
Where's my source for
Where's
that?
your source that 90% of rapes are immigrants?
Actually, 100% in some cities. In
Well,
Malmö.
the problem is you quote these statistics. But
Okay,
I can't.
say I quote a statistic that says that 2/3 of British Muslims would not report on another Muslim they knew to be involved with terrorism. Is that a worrying statistic?
Where's the source for that?
That's Trevor Phillips,
Right.
who was the head of equality and diversity.
Right.
That was from his own research. He found that 2/3 of British Muslims, that's 2 million Muslims in this country, would not report on another fellow Muslim who they knew was being involved with terrorism. Now, that should be the wake-up call that everyone needs. Just that 20% sympathise with suicide bombing. 4%.
So this is a really fundamental thing, because I'm wondering what percentage, what proportion of the Muslim community that you're worried about.
Yeah.
What,
Okay.
You know.
Well, I can answer that easily. I'm worried about the 66% who refuse to report on another Muslim for terrorism. Only 7% of Prevent's leads. Prevent is the counter-extremism government way of dealing with this.
But
Only
you understand that that it is Muslims who are helping to,
Only 7%.
to foil a lot of these terrorist
No,
plots.
I've just told you. Only 7% of the leads on these Muslim terrorists comes from within the community. What I'm saying is, when you see a statistic that tells us that 20%, I'm going off Trevor Phillips. Trevor Phillips is the man who brought the term Islamophobia to Britain. Trevor Phillips used to be the man who said you can't criticise Islam. Now he's done a full 360 because he's realised what British Muslims think.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying every Muslim thinks this. What I'm saying is I'm going off the polls and statistics, which should be terrifying to the British public. 20% of British Muslims believe violence is okay for anyone who insults the Prophet Muhammad. 20%. From Trevor Phillips' poll. 4% believe suicide bombings. Just so we know, 4% of British Muslims, it's 100,000 Muslims in this country, believe suicide bombing is okay.
Look, I don't know these statistics.
But the biggest worry we're supposed to think, the biggest worry is the far right.
The
rebel outside.
Right. Well, but you've said in the past, you tried to join Quilliam. You had Muslim people at your wedding, I believe, and Muslim friends at school.
I did, yes.
I'm just trying to, when you talk about the threat of the Muslim community and make out that they're all very dangerous.
I didn't make out they're all very. I've not said that. So please don't put words in my mouth.
Well,
please don't put words in my mouth. I've never ever spoke collectively. Yeah. When you're talking about Muslims, the only one thing you're probably going to be able to bring up now is one speech I gave in Tower Hamlets where I said, if you're a Muslim and you're watching this, that's the only thing.
Yeah, we'll bring that up. Do you regret every single Muslim on Timton you got away with?
That's the only thing.
And maybe British citizens.
That's the only thing you can bring up.
Do you regret it?
Yes, I've said many times I regret that.
Have you?
Yes, I have. Yes, publicly.
Because
last
time I saw you being interviewed, you were defending it.
No. What I said is my
the
position.
Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League and our fellow citizens.
Yeah, my position at that time was simple. I was the leader of a pressure organisation. The English Defence League, at the time, we thought we could put enough pressure on the Muslim community that they'd start dealing with the problem within. Yeah. And they didn't.
So you are slightly justifying it.
That's what I did at the time. No, I've apologised. I've openly apologised.
You're sorry for that.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Do you worry?
That's the one.
Do you worry that kind of language?
That kind of language was in 2009. I've gave 200 speeches in towns and cities, and out of all those speeches, that's the one line you've been able to pull up.
Well, no. Let me give you your tweet that you did after Darren Osborne attacked a mosque in Finsbury Park. The mosque where the attack happened tonight has a long history of creating terrorists, radical jihadists, and promoting hate and segregation. I'm not justifying it. Well, you kind of are justifying it. And then you say, I said many times, the government police don't sort these senses of hate. They will create monsters as seen tonight. Yes. I'm not justifying it. Okay. Yes, you are.
Okay, can you bring... You know what I said there? Is there one thing that's not factually true? Or is the problem... Do you have the problem with the facts?
It's actually quite a moderate... It's a very moderate mosque now.
No, actually...
It's a very, very moderate mosque. I've been in there.
Actually, at the time of that attack, it's had a Muslim Brotherhood PR campaign. At the time of that attack, the lead chairman of the mosque was also a lead figure of Hamas. Hamas are a prescribed terrorist organisation.
So you're justifying
No, you
this.
just said it's a lovely mosque. It's led by a terrorist. It's led by a terrorist.
That's nonsense, and you're
No, it's not
justifying.
nonsense. No,
You're justifying what Darren Osborne.
How-
We're talking about the man
Are you really
mowing into a bunch of his
Yes.
innocent people,
Yes.
and you sound like, rather than saying I absolutely outright condemn it,
No.
you're saying,
no.
oh look, here's all these reasons why that was maybe okay.
You are aware that Darren Osborne didn't actually target the Finsbury Park Mosque, aren't you?
Well, he ploughed into people outside.
No, they hadn't been to the Finsbury Park Mosque. What he actually was targeting, I'm sure you're aware, you're a journalist. Do you know what he was targeting? Do you know what he was targeting that day?
Well, why are you talking about it in your tweet then?
Do you know what his intended target was that day?
No.
No, you're a journalist. It was actually the Al Quds March. His intended target was the Al Quds March. Now, did you, as Sky News, cover the fact that tens of thousands of Muslims were marching with terrorist flags through our capital city on that day, or did you not? Do you not think it's news?
Are you again? Seems to sound like you're kind of trying to justify
I'm gonna
what
ask-
he was doing.
I'm gonna
There was
ask
a
you-
march.
no,
There was a march.
There was a terrorist march, and Darren Osborne tells everyone quite clearly
Well,
why
he says
he
a
done this.
terrorist march.
Because
he was the terrorist that day.
They were marching with terrorist banners, terrorist flags through the capital,
Darren-
shouting "Bomb,
Darren
bomb the
Osborne
Jews."
was the terrorist that day.
Yes,
Do
you're
you
right.
accept that?
Yes, you're correct. Yes.
So why are you talking about some march that you describe as a
I'm
terrorist
trying.
march?
No, I'm asking you. You're saying. Show me what I
This
said.
is
again.
the
Show me what I
tweet.
said.
The mosque where the attack happened has a long history creating terrorist and radical jihads.
Is that true? Is that true?
Well, there have been sermons outside of it, yes.
Is it true what I said?
By Abu
So you
by
have a
Abu
problem
Hamza.
that what I said is factually true.
Well, you're saying this is the reason why it's happened. Aren't you?
No,
You
I'm not.
You are. You effectively are. You're saying you've warned us. You're saying, "Hey, I've
Okay.
told the government
Let me
many
tell you-
times
let-
this is going to happen."
I know I have, and the last thing I want is this. And I've expressed time again. I believe I remember giving a speech where I said you're probably 5 years away from having English suicide bombers.
All you should be doing on the day of a terrorist attack, surely, is condemning it.
I did condemn it.
It sounds like you've just
Read the tweet before that, or you not got the tweet before that.
What
Read the tweets before it. I put it into context. Put the whole thing into context. You've just
worry-
cherry picked out a certain tweet.
Well, cherry picking.
And let me tell you again, just so we're clear, that mosque on that day was led by a terrorist. Okay, he's part of a terrorist organisation. That's all been exposed about 2 months ago. I tried to tell Piers Morgan these facts. I asked him if he knew who the man was. This is the lovely mosque that you've been inside.
But it sounds to me again,
mosque you've
it's
been
like you're
inside.
just justifying it.
Would
You're
you
saying
go-
there's a
would you-
terrorist
would you
running
go
this
in-
mosque.
would you go
This
into
is
a
London
far-
mosque where a lot of peaceful people, and there were peaceful people who were one killed and others injured in this attack.
Yes, hadn't been in that mosque. They hadn't been in that mosque. But as we're talking about the mosque, you said it's a lovely mosque. The mosque is led by a terrorist who's part of a terrorist organisation. Would you be frequenting a building that was led by a Nazi terrorist? Would you? Because you just said it's lovely. If there were some peaceful, nice Nazis.
Look,
in there.
I met the imam there, and
it's actually
seemed like a very moderate person.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
he condemned radical Islam.
Of course he did. He's
Yeah.
a lead figure of a terrorist organisation. That's a fact, and that fact everyone knows now because it got exposed about 2 months ago by the Times newspaper. But at the time of that, which I knew at the time because it took me 10 minutes to find out who's in charge.
Do
of the
you
mosque.
worry, though, that people like Darren Osborne are out there listening to this sort of thing that you're saying?
Okay.
And it sounds like you're saying, "Oh well, there were a bunch of other terrorists that day."
Now, what I'm saying
this kind of activity does have a kind of a kind of justification around it, or at least there's a purpose and a reason behind it.
No, Darren Osborne made clear the reasons why he made his attack.
Does it worry you that he followed you on Facebook, he followed you on Twitter, he was part of the he joined up to the Rebel website? Does that worry you?
Does it worry you that there were 3 successful terrorist attacks before Darren Osborne? Darren Osborne reacted, okay, horrifically, okay.
Yeah.
But why were you not talking about the 26 children who were blown up in Manchester?
I did talk about that.
The
I was
nine-
there that day. I
nine-
was there outside the hospital.
So do you
talking
think
about
that
it.
played any part in what Darren Osborne done?
Look.
Darren Osborne gave a note. Darren Osborne gave a letter of why he
but
made
it
that
shouldn't,
attack.
though, should
It didn't
it?
mention
Shouldn't,
Tommy.
though, should
It
it?
didn't mention Tommy
It
Robinson.
shouldn't though, because it's not anything to do with those people.
So how is it anything to do with me? How are you? So it's
I'll
nothing.
tell you why I
so
think there's a problem.
You don't
I'll
think.
tell
You
you
don't
why
think
this is a
that-
problem.
But it
Because
was
you're
my fault.
right. You're right to say. You know, there are radical Islamic people who are blowing up Manchester Arena. We've seen the London attacks. You're right to say that, and you're right to say that there were people like Abu Hamza who were, behind the scenes
fact,
a long time ago
the
with a
imam
small group
the
of
imam
people.
you went and met, who's a lovely fella. He's a radical.
Well, I'm talking about Abu Hamza because we know of the fact that he's, or Omar Bakri, who has inspired the nitrate crosses. And I just wonder if you see any parallels between people stirring up hatred against the West and causing people to commit terrorist attacks, and people stirring up hatred against Muslims and causing them to commit terrorist attacks, and not able to, and finding it hard to condemn that.
See the word hatred.
Yeah.
If I sit
Fear
here, if I
is
sit
another
here,
word.
if I sit here and state facts, which I've done or which I will do, about Islam, is that hatred?
Look, I think I'm asking you if you
I'm asking
worry
you. I'm asking you
about and we can talk about what facts and what aren't facts, and a lot of it's about context and how you say it. And if you say something like that on the day after a terrorist attack, context is important.
Let's look. So on the day of that attack, we see attack at Finsbury Park Mosque. So we think that's what the media run with.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's look at Finsbury.
But did you watch it? Go, Christ, I'm worried this guy follows me on Twitter or this guy follows me on Facebook.
No,
Do I have any?
No, I looked
influence
and thought, Christ, why has he done this? So then I went on Finsbury Park Mosque website. I started looking up and I saw that the lead member of the mosque was a terrorist. I then started looking at all the extremism that they still have going on there. So then I tried to think, why has this happened? Because it's, when there's no light at the end of a tunnel, which is currently what we don't have, we have no solutions. Since David Cameron, after Lee Rigby was beheaded on the streets of London, David Cameron came out and he set a 5-year anti-extremism plan, okay, of how he was going to tackle this extremism and hatred. During that 5 years, he allowed 2,000 British Muslims to go and fight and train and behead people for ISIS. 700 of them have been allowed to come back. What I'm saying is, people see that the government are not up to solving this problem.
I think it's a bit high, by the way, 2,700.
2,000 went, 700 have come back. I know this because the lead officer of Bedfordshire Police, Rob Bartlett, come and saw me. I was due to be somewhere in London, and the lead inspector.
Figures, I can't, I don't think that figure's accurate.
Okay, well that's come from the Labour MP, Mr. Hussain.
I think it's about 800. Maybe we don't know how many
no,
come
it's
back.
not.
We
No,
don't
it's
know how
not.
many. We genuinely don't know how many come back.
No, don't you think that's a problem?
Yeah. But
Okay, so don't you think that's something that you should be alarmed about rather than me giving a talk or giving facts?
Well, you can talk about it, and we will.
I can talk about it. You'll just
have
blame me.
We have
just,
no.
you'll
We
just
have
try and
reported
blame
on
me
it.
when
No,
there's been a
but
terrorist
I'm
attack.
talking about. It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is.
What matters is that Darren Osborne made it clear why he done this attack. He spoke about Al-Quds. He spoke about Jeremy Corbyn. He spoke about Islam. He spoke about rapes. He spoke about terrorism.
He followed you on Twitter and
so
followed your Facebook.
And he followed
feed,
Sky News.
And
he followed Sky News.
And
he followed Sky News. So
Yeah,
does that mean
there's a
so
small-
he followed you on Twitter?
Well, I don't know if he followed.
Well, he
us on
followed Sky
Twitter.
News. So it must be your fault. No, seriously.
No, but you know what I mean.
No, I don't know what you mean.
Well, what I'm trying to get at,
I know
Tommy,
that you're
is
trying to.
there's a group.
I know what you're
know
trying
what-
to do.
No.
But the
but
public
I'm
will
trying
also see what you're trying to do.
No.
And the reason for this is the public sees straight through your nonsense of what you're trying to do.
What's your? Do you see yourselves as Islamophobic?
What is? You've just mentioned a word
Yeah.
that means nothing. A phobia. What is a phobia? A phobia is an irrational fear.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think it's rational when 26 children are blown up in Manchester, when we have
By one Muslim when there are 3.8 million in the country?
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many there are. Do you think it's an irrational fear to worry when we see, within a 4-month period, we see a van kill 9, injured 67. We see another attack. This is Westminster and London Bridge. We see all these attacks. Now, when we see these, and then we see statistics that say, well,
so it's okay to be worried.
Of course, we should be worried. And in fact,
But-
when
but-
we are
but-
worried and we base our worry in our
Are
fear.
you not worried about radicalised Islamic people who've taken the wrong interpretation of Islam,
Have you
rather than?
Oh, it's the wrong interpretation. Says who?
Well, it says a lot of people who follow the Muslim faith.
You've read the Quran?
I have read the Quran.
You've
Only
read-
only the English version.
And what
so
did you
I don't
think?
Speak,
What did you
I don't
think?
speak it. I don't speak it.
What did you
Well,
think?
What do you think?
Well, there's 109 verses in that book that incite war and murder against non-Muslims. So I thought pretty.
Well, you could
extreme.
say that there's extreme language in the Bible.
Oh, so that's acceptable then.
I'm not
So-
saying it is, but I'm
What-
saying you're talking about an ancient
No,
text.
I'm saying
that-
why. I'm saying why I'm worried.
Yeah.
I'm saying why I'm worried, and you're trying to justify why I shouldn't be
No.
worried because the
No,
Bible
I'm
says.
not trying to justify anything. I'm just challenging.
So
your
I'll tell you
concern.
why.
Because
I'll
are
tell
you
you why.
concerned about Christians?
I'll tell you why I'm worried and why the majority of the British public are worried. Mohammed, who is seen as the moral compass for British Muslims, yeah, they believe he was perfect. Right? You agree with that?
Sorry, I just lost my microphone.
Do you agree that Muslims believe Muhammad was perfect? You understand that? You understand that though?
I understand that they believe he was the prophet.
And
Yeah.
he's perfect.
Well, I don't know if they believe
Well,
he's
okay,
perfect,
well,
but
they
I
do.
know they believe he's the
They
prophet.
believe he's done nothing wrong. Now, I'll give you a book to read by Ibn Ishaq. It's the biography of Muhammad. If you read that book, you'll see that Muhammad beheaded 600 people in one day. You'll see that he tortured a man called Kanana, and you'll see that he raped a child. Now, when you see that, which I've read and I've learned and I've studied, and I think, hold on a minute, this man is a very immoral and very bad man. And then I see
Well, Jesus said, "I'm not coming to bring peace, but a sword."
Jesus.
So, yeah. So is he responsible for knife crime in London?
if they were holding up that exact verse, if every single knife criminal was holding up that verse saying Jesus told me to kill him, so I killed him, I'd be saying yes, that verse is responsible. I'm saying that Salman Abdi, for example, Salman Abdi could recite the Quran without looking at it. Okay, each other attack has. Lee Rigby's killer handed 55 verses written on a piece of paper to a woman in the street that he said forced him to do that killing.
Yeah.
My point.
Do you not think they've got a warped idea? I mean, we don't see Christians running around with swords.
No,
Do you not think they have a warped idea of what the Quran is actually preaching?
After reading the Quran and understanding abrogation and understanding that what Muhammad says later in his life supersedes what he says earlier, after understanding all of that, no, I believe that they are following out literal.
Then I would say to you that you've been radicalised.
Would you?
Yeah, I'd say that you're following the same understanding of Islam as the people who listen to Omar Bakri, who listen to Abu Hamza.
No, not just.
If you really believe that.
What about the 66% of people who would not report on a terrorist? Would you say they've been radicalised?
No, I'd say you've been radicalised because you believe in the same things as the followers of Abu Hamza.
So because
you and your support, you're the only people who believe and would take that literally. Take the idea of not come in peace but bring a sword. Oh well, I better get a sword out.
No, that's because I understand Islam. So
you're not a theologian. You don't understand Islam.
I do understand.
You're not. You haven't studied. Have you read it in Arabic?
I've got the best.
Have you read the Quran in Arabic?
My Quran is the best-selling Quran in the world.
You haven't read the Arabic version.
Oh, so because
but there's different interpretations, and what I'm saying is there are theologians who spend a lot of time. Of course, there are.
Which theologians?
Tribes. Well, any imam.
Any imam.
Yeah, any imam who has studied it.
What about say for example, Luton's leading imam. His name's Kadir Bask, who I battled against for 8 years, and then in the end, he ended up once they translated his sermons, he was telling them to prepare their weapons and war ready for us. Is he wrong?
Well, it sounds like if he's inciting people towards violence, then of course he's wrong.
So just so we can,
I don't know because I haven't seen that.
Just so we can understand this,
yeah.
Boko Haram, ISIS, Al Qaeda, all of these groups, all of these organisations that run huge, they have all interpreted the Quran incorrectly, exactly the same way.
But my worry is that you believe that, and you believe that they have interpreted it the correct way.
No, I know they've interpreted it the correct way. What I'm saying is
the majority of radicalised.
The majority of Muslims do not follow the Quran. The majority of Muslims. If we go outside here and go into a local betting shop, it'll be full of Muslims, right? Yeah. They're not following Islam.
Well, a lot of Christians don't follow all the Ten Commandments.
I know.
And God said, if you don't follow the Ten Commandments, you'll eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. It's pretty violent language.
What I'm saying is, if a Muslim,
because it was written years ago, centuries ago.
But you understand that Islam hasn't adapted or changed at all. The Quran is as it was.
Of course, it hasn't changed and adapted because you've just said people don't follow it to the letter, to the word. They don't pick out a phrase and say, I have to do this because the Quran says it.
You're right, but that doesn't mean that the Quran does not incite that.
And it's the same with the Bible.
No, that doesn't mean we have the New Testament. That doesn't mean that the Quran doesn't incite that. So what you're saying is I'm wrong for reading correctly the book. What I'm saying is the majority of Muslims don't take...
I'm saying you don't necessarily read it correctly. And there are 3.8 million Muslims in this country who are living here peacefully.
Yes.
And my fear is that you're suggesting that they're following a book that's suggesting that they shouldn't. And there's a very, very, very tiny proportion
The book defies, in fact, 4 times as many British Muslims went to join ISIS than joined the British Army. 4 times as many. So you can say it's a tiny...
there were about... Well, how many? So realistically, there were about 800 went to Syria, maybe... about 800.
2,000.
The number who joined ISIS, some of them would have joined the forces that we were actually supporting fighting against Assad as well.
Yeah, so that's because...
So we don't know the exact number. We don't know the exact number.
The other terrorist
who joined ISIS. So you're talking about roughly 0.01% of the population, the Muslim British population.
Yes.
So it's not a huge amount, is it?
You don't need a huge amount. They don't need a huge figure. To have terrorism and the things that I worry about, to have our country implode, which we'll see it, Well, they don't need a huge number. I think Nazis were only 7%, weren't they, of Germany?
I think they came the entire population.
No, they were 7% of Germany. They were 7% when they took over, right?
Let's talk about.
My point is that you said I've been radicalised. So will you agree that if 66%, no, in fact, if we go for the 20% of British Muslims who believe someone should be violently attacked,
Look, I don't know about these figures.
But why not?
So I can't comment on.
Okay, well, they're Trevor Phillips
figures.
figures.
You can't.
But I'm asking, hypothetically speaking, do you think they've been radicalised?
I'm interviewing you. Let's talk about this case.
Can you quote one thing I've ever said where I've incited violence?
Well, I think this thing where you talk about the Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see your fellow citizens killed again.
Yeah, demonstrations. It's an organisation. We're a pressure group.
Well, you can interpret that any way you like.
Oh, no,
Darren Osborne might have interpreted it one way.
Well, that was actually in 2009, 2010.
Yeah, but still.
Darren Osborne made clear the reasons why he committed the terrorist attack he did. He made it very clear. He actually blamed you guys as well, the media. And I believe the documentary Free Girls played a part in it, according to his wife. So we have the evidence
Which shows actually that the media does report what's going on in places.
No, they didn't. They've had to. They've had to now report. They've had to now report.
Well, they've had to. But Andrew Norfolk was, from the Times, really did a great expose on what was going on.
Did he? Andrew Norfolk. Let me quote him. He was told, and he ignored it for 10 years. The only time he decided to do something was because he had to take it back from the far right. So his motives and reason for exposing the child grooming gangs was not. It was not to help the children. It was not to stop the rapes. It was because he saw the English Defence League doing it.
Come on.
I'm quoting his words. I'm quoting his words. I'm quoting his words. His words. He said he knew it was going on for 10 years.
Journalists don't.
He knew it was going on. The same as all of you journalists knew it was going on. In every local newspaper.
So you're criticising the guy who exposed the Rotherham scandal.
I'm criticising the reasons why he exposed it, and I'm quoting him. He knew it was going on, but he done nothing. The reason he done nothing because it was brown Asian men raping young white children, the far right stream. That's what he said. I'm quoting him. The only reason why he decided to act on it was to take it back from the imaginary far right. His words.
Why do you stand outside courthouses?
Why do I
talk about a particular case when you know that it could potentially be contempt of court?
So I believe that forewarned is forearmed. I believe that we should have education system going on across this.
Do you not believe in the legal system? The right of fair trial?
Yes, and those men had a right to a fair trial. Nothing I said could have prejudiced that trial. We'll have this argument obviously on Thursday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you had the case back in May last year. The Canterbury judge Heather Norton said, this isn't about free speech. It's not about freedom of the press. It's not about legitimate journalism, political correctness. It's about justice.
Can I explain to you about that justice that she
and ensuring that a trial can be carried out justly and fairly.
So on Canterbury, there was 5 men who were on bail. One of them disappeared again, like they do. One of them done a runner.
Well, that's up to the law. That's not up to vigilante Tommy Robinson.
No, that's not. That's up to that judge who gave them bail. So she failed the British public. Now, those 5 men who had, let's give the evidence was that a young girl was lost. She went into a takeaway and asked for directions. 5 men took her upstairs and they gang raped her. Their DNA was found at the time in every hole she had, all over her. Okay, all of their DNAs were found. Now, I knew they were on trial, but then I heard that they're still running the same chicken shop. So I drove down to Canterbury and I went to the business. And lo and behold, they're still running the shop. And I spoke to the business next door and said, excuse me, have you seen any young girls in that shop? She said, yeah, there was lots of young girls in there yesterday. Now, I'm a father and I have 2 daughters. And I believe that allowing men who are on suspicion with DNA evidence, they should have been in prison. They're all serving 20 years in jail now, right? So they were paedophiles.
Yeah, we can talk about the case.
Okay,
absolutely.
so they were paedophiles.
Yeah.
How have they been allowed to continue running a business that brings them in contact? In fact, all they've done, because I went through the company's house, they changed from 777 pizza to 555 pizza. And then they continued serving young children in the very business where that child was raped. Now, I'll be straight honest with you. If I believe I'm morally right, then I'm not bothered about what your law says. I know that I know.
Really?
In that
so you're not bothered about the law?
in that sense,
So you're above the law.
no, in that sense,
If you're morally
in that
right, you're above the
sense-
law.
no,
So if I upset you, punch me in the face.
I'll tell you what I believe. No, I'll tell you what
That's
I believe.
okay.
I'll tell you what I believe.
Stupid
I
thing to
believe
say.
that the
No,
dad.
it isn't a stupid question.
No, listen.
If you
Let me explain
believe
it. Let me
that
explain
you've got
it.
a moral
Let me explain
argument,
it.
then
Let
the
me
law
explain it.
doesn't matter.
If another young girl would have been raped in that shop, yeah, if another young girl would have been raped in that shop, so what I wanted to do, and all I wanted to do, right, was get a video of the men's faces, and I knew it would have gone viral. And then I've gone to their shop already. I've already been to their shop, and then I want every single child and parent that lives within that vicinity to know what those men are alleged to
And
have
then
done.
the
at the
court
time.
says, right, we can't charge these guys now because
can't?
because you've influenced the jury.
No, what the-
Do you not understand
No, no.
influencing the jury?
Yes, I do. I've been on my own training courses. Influencing the jury is when you assume guilt. I
Yeah,
said
but you do something to make a jury think that person might be more likely to be guilty.
But I think their DNA done that. I think their
Well,
DNA
I think that you're helping. You're
No.
helping the case. It doesn't
Okay,
matter.
I'll tell you what happened in that
You
case.
have all the
I'll tell-
DNA
I'll tell you what
evidence if you like.
happened- I'll
That
tell you
case
what
could
happened in that
easily get thrown
I'll
out.
tell you what happened in that case. The judge let down the British public. Those men should have been in a prison cell.
You potentially let down the British public.
No, I potentially
by
didn't.
potentially committing a contempt of court that could have got the whole thing thrown out.
Which you didn't.
Do you not understand that though?
Which
Do
you
you
didn't.
understand that potentially it could have done?
Do I understand? At the time, I'll be honest with you. At the time,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of contempt of court laws or
okay.
rules. Now, after that case, what I did is I went to Kingsley Napoli. Do you know who they are? They were the leading law firm in London, and I went and done my own training. I paid privately
Yeah.
for training because I'm
Journalism court training.
court training, which
Right.
which I haven't
Okay.
had. Yeah?
Yeah.
So at that case, I went off my heart. I went and I thought, hold on a minute. I went down there and saw that young girls are still in this chicken shop, and these men are still there. So I felt alarmed, shocked.
Yeah.
So then I went to the court. Now I learned from this. I learned from this court case. Yeah, I think the judge let the British public down by letting them men walk the street. Okay, that's what I feel. I feel that all of these grooming cases, when they're out on bail, they shouldn't be out on bail. Many of them are disappearing whilst on bail. But I went and got my own training. Now what I realised then is to assume guilt. So if you watch my Leeds court video,
Then you should have known. Then you should have known that you're potentially
No, I knew it was-
disrupting the potential for a case to run its course.
Why is that?
And that's what the judge is telling you here.
in which one?
In this Canterbury case, Heather Norton.
Oh,
is
but I didn't
saying
know because
it's
I-
about preserving the
if
integrity
you-
of a jury to
I've just
continue
told
without
you.
being.
I've
I've seen juries.
I
break
just
down.
told you.
Yeah.
I didn't have training
No.
until after Canterbury.
Yeah.
Because of Canterbury and because I went before the
So you
judge.
accept now that what you did in Canterbury was wrong.
I accept that. Yeah, the things I said on camera at Canterbury, I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware that there's court steps. If you step on the court steps, you're in contempt of court with a camera. Yeah, I didn't know that. Right? That's what I was actually convicted of. I was actually convicted of not influencing the jury. I was convicted of filming on court property. I didn't know that. Okay, so I went for training days then, and I had lessons on basically. If you watch my most recent one, I said they're innocent till proven guilty. They may walk out of here not guilty. I didn't harass them. I said, how are you feeling about your verdict? When I walk into court on Thursday, how many journalists are going to ask me questions?
I've no idea.
Well, how many do you think?
Yeah,
They will, won't
I
they?
imagine
They will, won't they?
you might. It's a judge. It's a judge.
When Rolf
it's
Harris,
a judge running the
when
case.
Rolf Harris walked into court,
It's a judge
how
running
many media videoed him?
Oh, the video. Yeah.
Okay, so why can't I video someone
you-
coming in?
you-
Is this because they're Muslims? I can't video.
No, okay, but why don't you do it outside the case of white paedophiles?
I'm highlighting right. What I've done is 90%. These are facts again. Facts that have come from.
Okay.
Yeah, let me
Give
give
me
you.
your sources.
I will actually.
Okay.
Right? So grooming convictions, street gang grooming convictions, 90% of them are Muslim males, and 30% are called Mohammed. These are facts. Yeah. If you want my Sajid Javid, I'm going to quote him in my court case on Thursday because if you want me in the dock for
Yeah.
prejudice in a trial, I think Sajid Javid, our Home Secretary, should be standing next to me. As should Nafsi Azal, the leader.
Why should the Home Secretary?
Because what they've said, the latest charge they've added on me, is that because I stood outside court and I said that Muslim men are overrepresented in these grooming scandals, yeah, that could prejudice the jury. Well, that's exactly what Sajid Javid said on BBC News.
Well, he said that high-profile cases, the number of high-profile cases
No,
that are overrepresented.
In these
That is-
in these grooming
in these
cases.
grooming cases, yeah, high-profile grooming.
In these grooming
Yeah,
cases.
high-profile ones.
No,
That's what he
just,
said.
no, just in
No,
grooming.
read
Okay,
it,
well,
read the transcript. That's what he said.
read the Quilliam
So
report.
it's
Do you
slightly
want to read
different.
it? Would you like
It's
to read
slightly
it?
different to what you said.
Okay, so the Quilliam Foundation done a
Just to
report.
be fair to the Home Secretary.
The Quilliam Foundation done a report. I'm going to quote him in my court case on Thursday.
Yeah.
The Quilliam Foundation done a report and found that 84% of the men convicted are of South Asian, Pakistani.
On a very specific
Grooming.
type of sexual activity. What about the Bristol case, for example, 2015?
Gang grooming. I'm on about gang.
Gang of 7 men.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they're part of the other 10%. What I'm saying, 90% are Muslim, 10%
But
aren't.
why aren't you outside their? Why aren't you outside their court case? They're still part of the same problem, aren't they?
Has it been said?
They're white. You're not
Can
out
I-
there. You're
can
not
I ask you-
outside their courthouse because
Has
they're
it
white.
been said? Has it been said that the reason these men were allowed to do what they done was because the government and the police were scared because they're white? Has that been said?
Yeah. I'm just asking you a question. If you're worried about grooming gangs and paedophilia, why aren't you outside the courthouse of a bunch of white paedophiles who are raping toddlers and babies
Yep.
in 2015? Why
And,
aren't you there?
and I'm telling you that these gangs have been allowed to do it for 30 years.
But I'm saying, well, what about the Catholic Church? Tens of thousands of
despise the
children.
Catholic
Why are
Church.
you not outside their court
I despise
cases?
the Catholic Church.
Why are you not outside their courthouses? then?
When is a court case on for the Catholic Church paedophiles?
Well, there was one in Glasgow this year.
When? Was I in prison?
I don't know.
I actually
But
despise...
would you? You'd stand outside a courthouse.
I believe that our government, I believe there's a woman in prison now called Melanie
about-
Shaw. Yeah?
what
There's a
about-
woman in prison now called Melanie Shaw who is a whistleblower for paedophile gangs. So yes, I believe that high-ranking officials in this country have suppressed and silenced and stopped the arrest of known paedophiles.
What about
now that
so
goes
people like
all
Jimmy
across the
Savile?
board. Yeah, people like Jimmy Savile.
So Operation U Tree. Have you ever stood outside an Operation U Tree trial?
Have I? No.
Why not? Is it because they're
As
white?
I've- no, it's not good.
Is it because they're not Muslims?
No, it's not. No.
What
It's
about
because
sex
I've-
tourists?
As I've just told you.
What about people like Gary Glitter
As
who
I've
go
just told
abroad
you.
and rape children in Cambodia or
Do you know what?
Philippines?
Do you know what?
Does that
your
upset
job?
you?
Your job. Unfortunately, I've had to come and fill a void and do your job. You're the mainstream media.
No, I'm just asking you why
and I'm
you
telling
don't do that.
And I'm telling you because I have focused on exposing a phenomenon across this country that sees 90%, and that's just a figure. If you look in Rotherham, so let's talk about Rotherham. 1,400 children were raped in Rotherham. That's the charity figure. Yeah, 1,400.
Yeah.
There's only 3% of Rotherham Muslim community. Only 3%. Okay. Telford, 7%. What we've done is we've used Telford and we've used Rotherham as scapegoat cities to expose a problem that when you come to towns like Luton or Bradford or Birmingham,
Yeah.
you can't expose it because once the Muslim community gets so big,
But what I'm saying is there are a
Yeah.
huge number of paedophiles in this country. If you're quoting Sajid Javid, he said about 80,000, for example, accessing online paedophilia. The Muslim ones that you're focusing
the
on,
ones
they're
who've been
drop in the ocean.
No, they're the ones. They're not
They're
dropping the ocean.
They are.
You tell that to the children's dads.
Well, you tell that to the
You tell
dads
that
of
to the
any
victims.
any victim.
Yeah.
Tell that to the dad of any victim. But what I'm saying
What I'm saying is
you're
this-
focusing on this because
No, I'm not.
of their religion.
I'm focusing it because, I'm focusing on it because there was conspiracy of silence.
Because you-
No, listen. There was a conspiracy of silence by you, right? The mainstream media, by politicians, by religious
Well, you
leaders.
could say
you
that.
all
You could say
conspired
that. You could
to
say
allow it to
that
happen.
about U-Tree. You could say that about 1970s TV presenters. You could say that about the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And we know that there are paedophiles in society, but you seem to be saying that there's a specific problem amongst Muslim men.
The statistics tell you 90% of conviction. Muslim men make up 2% of this country's population. 2%.
Yeah.
Okay. 90% of convictions are Muslim men. That basic fact tells you that they are hugely overrepresented, and everyone should ask why. And what I'll tell you is,
No, there's-
what I'll tell you is, when you read the Quran, when you understand Islam, Islam permits Muslim men to take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves.
Well, the Bible. How are you going back to this? The Bible says
No, I'm
that
going-
men
I-
can sell their daughters into slavery. There's a whole
I'm
chapter on it in Exodus.
Muhammad had sexual slaves. I'm going back.
You-
The Prophet Muhammad had sexual slaves. I'm going back to why this is happening. And if you want to stop it happening,
I
if
mean,
you
the
want to
British
stop it-
Empire isn't exactly free of blame around the whole issue of slavery. I mean,
I'm talking about an epidemic of Muslim gangs raping young children. He's on about the British Empire.
No, but
so
you're on about a text that goes back to, the 7th century.
a text that Boko Haram, when Nigerian girls were taken, the lead. When I'll tell you from my point of view. When I
Nobody
sit
who
there,
reads the Bible, who reads about the rules of slavery in the Bible, looks at it and applies it to today's rules.
So ISIS-
and
so
it's the
ISIS-
same with
so
it's the
ISIS
same
have-
with
ISIS have it?
they're in an Islamic state. We are in the United Kingdom, and people have to abide by the rules of
So
this
let
country.
me ask you then. Let me ask you then. Why are 90% of grooming gang convictions Muslim men? Why? Why do you think?
I don't know the answer to
Oh,
that
that's
question. I
very
don't know
helpful
what.
of you.
No, I don't. But
Why-
I know
what-
that the
what
Home
do you think the
Secretary.
reason
No,
could
but
be?
I know that the Home Secretary is looking at it. And I don't think it's right to speculate
No,
on
what
the
do you-
reason
no,
is.
no, no, so
but
what-
it could be cultural, but it equally could be.
It could be
that there's a
cultural.
group of criminal networks that are operating together. There's a big issue at the moment around county lines drug dealing. There could be any number of issues. So I don't think it's right for us to speculate.
Do you think we should try
on
and
what
find
the
out
issues.
what
I
the reason
certainly
is?
don't think
Do
it's
you-
right
do you
to
think-
stand outside a courthouse and say that the people in there might be more guilty because
I
they're
didn't say-
Muslim.
I didn't say.
You're insinuating it.
I'm
You're,
not- I
you're
didn't say.
standing outside a courthouse. Yes, you are. You're saying, look, they're reading this text, telling us. You just told me that they can take slaves.
They can.
That if that message gets to the jury, you've just blown out the case.
Actually, the head of the CPS and the judge, which I've got the transcripts, both said that nothing I said could have prejudiced the jury.
Well, it sounds like it.
Nothing.
Sounds like it. If
Why
that's
does it
what
sound
you
like
said.
So, a fact.
If you're standing outside a courthouse, you're saying, look, they've read this text that tells them they can have slaves.
I didn't say they had read that text. No, I didn't.
You're saying this is the text that they follow. You're saying Muslims follow a text which allows them to have young children as slaves. You're standing outside a courthouse.
I didn't say that.
That could influence the jury.
I
But
did not say that.
honestly, I've been in juries
I
where
did
people
not
see
say that. I did not say that.
I thought you just said that to me.
Yeah, I'm saying to you, I did not say that outside
didn't
that
say that
courthouse.
outside the courthouse.
Outside that courthouse, what I said is so we can understand. Because don't you think we need to get to the bottom of the reason why 90% of the men...
Absolutely, and the Home Secretary
We're
is
not allowed to.
commissioned a report on it.
I only commissioned a report after I got sent to prison. Prior to me being sent to prison, had he commissioned a report on it? In fact,
No,
you,
people were-
Sky News, you labelled the gangs Asian. Why?
Well, I've talked about them being Pakistani men. I've talked about them being Muslims.
No,
I can only talk about my own
no,
reports.
no, you label them Asian. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Now, if you know anything about Britain, you'd know that in the 1970s or 80s, the Sikh community of this country had to form a nationwide gang called Shila Punjab.
Yeah.
They had to form that gang to protect their daughters. Okay, because their daughters were being taken. Still now, their daughters are being taken. Okay, by Muslim men. Okay. Now, what I'm saying is, we need to research and we need to try and stop this happening. Now, the best way to stop this happening is to give parents the evidence, because it's evidence and factual, that this is what Islam promotes. Islam promotes that as soon as a child, you know, I've been on debates where I've sat on a debate and I've talked about these children, and one of the Muslim women, it was on the Nikki Campbell show, she said young women. And I only when I watched it back, when I said children, she corrected me and said young women. Now, if you know Islam, then as soon as a girl starts her period, she's a woman, she's not a child anymore. Now, that's why there has been no outcry within the Islamic community over what these men have been doing.
Well, they don't. They very much don't
They blame
believe in
the
sex
victim.
before marriage. I mean, that's
They do with non-Muslims. They're allowed to take sexual slaves under Islam.
in an old-fashioned thing. So
An old-fashioned thing.
from the 7th century. There's
It's
not.
not
There's
from the
not in
7th
this country. There's nobody with
It's
sexual slaves.
Okay, so a young girl who's 11 years old in Oxford.
And by the way, on the Bible, you're allowed
There's
to
a young,
sell your daughter
a
into
young
slavery.
girl who was 11 years old in Oxford. They heated up an iron rod with the letter M for the Prophet Muhammad and scolded it on her bum. Would you agree she was a slave?
I mean, that's.
They nailed her
abhorrent.
tongue to
It's
a
an
table.
abhorrent thing to do,
So
of
would you
course,
agree
yeah.
that she was a slave?
It's an abhorrent thing to do.
Okay, so let me give you
and
the fact is that across this country, in every
there's abhorrent things done
in every single
by people behind closed doors.
in every
white,
single
black,
town and city,
Muslim, all across the country.
in every single town and city in this country, young children are being taken as slaves by gangs of Muslim men. Now, if you don't want to draw the correlation to the fact that Islam promotes and allows that, then you don't want to because you're too weak and too much of a coward to do it. But I will do it. I will tell people we need to look at why this is happening and understand
And
why
I'm
it's happening.
telling you that you're potentially inciting racial hatred.
Unbelievable.
You've been out on the streets. You get. You know,
Don't you
over
think
the course of your
What
time as
race-
the EDL
what-
as an EDL member, you were getting people out on the streets.
What race have I
who were
mentioned?
who were
What
getting
race have I
angry.
mentioned?
You've
race have I mentioned?
You've mentioned Muslims, and you mentioned
Muslims
we've
aren't a
talked
race.
about
You understand
Pakistani.
that?
We've talked about Pakistani men.
Islam is not a race.
Yeah, but we've talked
So-
about Pakistani
so
men
me-
who believe in Israel, and this is
So-
semantics
No,
about
no, no.
whether
You-
it's
you
racism
can't make
or
it-
Islamophobia.
You can't make an accusation
It
like
is
that.
semantics.
You can't
It
make
is
an accusation
semantics.
like that on TV and not back up. Tell me what I've said that is inciting racial hatred.
You're suggesting that people of a certain origin are more likely to be rapists or child pedophiles or take slaves.
So that's
So
factual.
that's
That's actually factual by the grooming statistics and the rest. That's inciting racial hatred to you.
That you are suggesting that there is a group within society who are more likely to be paedophiles. You might say the same about the Catholic Church, for example.
There is actually. If we look at people who run churches, and there is a higher
And there are
percentage
people who
chance that the
are
person
in
running
authority.
there's a higher percentage chance that the person running the Catholic church is going to be a paedophile than the person running a Buddhist church, or a Sikh temple. That's a fact. Okay. Now another fact is that there is a higher percentage chance that it's Muslim men for street gang grooming. That's a fact.
You're equating it to the book that they read.
No, okay. When I sit on TV and I watch Boko Haram, who are a terrorist organisation in Nigeria, when they kidnapped 200 Nigerian women, we all saw the campaign "Free Our Girls." Yeah? We saw every political leader holding it. What the leader of Boko Haram said on the camera is, "Muhammad has commanded us to do this." That's not me equating it. That's the leader telling us why he's took those girls. Now he clearly says, we've took those girls because Muhammad commanded us to. If you look at ISIS and all the sex slaves they've taken, they clearly state this is justified under Sharia, that's why we're doing this. Now what I'm saying is, if we've got sex slaves being taken in every Islamic country in the world, and then we look at the statistics in Britain, and we see that the majority, 90% of these grooming convictions, brothers are sharing young children as victims, cousins, fathers and sons. Okay?
Yeah.
There's something seriously different within this community that views how this is. There's no outlaw. In fact, at each one of these court trials, all the women and all the families are calling the young girls slags.
But if
They're
you're
11-year-old
worried about
children.
this, if you're worried about this, do you not accept making it more difficult for justice to be done? I mean, these guys are going through the justice system.
No.
What's your problem?
Okay, there was a video called Loverboy that come out of Holland, which was showing that in Holland it's Moroccans, okay, doing these crimes. In Britain it's Pakistanis. We have majority Pakistanis. If you go to France, it's Algerians. Common denominator in all of them, they're Muslims. Now, if you go to Holland, they actually created an educational video to be shown in schools to warn children about these crimes. When they tried to show that in Britain in 2007, the British establishment would not allow that video to be shown because, like you just go, oh, it will incite racial hatred. So because of people
it's going to incite fear to suggest that, when you also know that there are, like the group in Bristol, white paedophiles. There's the.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't care if it incites fear, so long as it educates the children and prevents them being raped. Okay. Now that fear is a genuine, realistic fear that people should have. You know, every parent who lives near a Muslim community who has a young daughter, that fear's already in them. Okay, because they're already worried, scared, because they know what's happening. Do you know how many girls I know that I grew up with in Luton who are now wearing burqas or have been abused and sexually abused and raped?
So you've told me you're not really interested in going into politics. You're not really interested in that sort of democratic process.
I haven't said
but
that.
I didn't
say that.
Well, you said you didn't want to become an MP. You just wanted to.
I said that what I'd love to see is I'd love to see UKIP represent the working class people of this country, and I'd love to see them galvanise and politicise the support and the movement. That's what I'd love to see.
But do you really want to leave this into with the thought that you're happy to instill fear of a community of 3.8 million people?
If you watch every speech I've ever given, okay, I say, in fact, let's go back to my Leeds video, yeah, the one that I went to prison for. Have you watched the video?
No, it was taken down.
Oh, you've never watched the video?
No,
it's not been taken.
live stream.
It's not been taken down. It's online now.
Okay.
So you haven't watched the video?
No.
In that video, I make it clear that there are many young Muslims that I've grown up with who would be as disgusted as me with what's happened to these children. Okay, I make it clear that it's not all Muslims. I make that very clear every time I talk. Okay, but just because the problem is identified from coming from that community, I'm not going to stop saying it or stop educating or stop telling the truth about it. Now, what you seem to have had a problem with so far is truth and facts. You don't like the reality of what the teachings of Islam are, and you have a problem with me identifying.
No, I'm just saying that there's similar teachings in the Bible about slavery.
That's not an argument. That's not an argument. That is not an argument.
Well, it is, because what we're saying is there's only you that's taking it literally.
Oh,
you and Abu Hamza and the radical parts of extremism.
What about
who believe that this is actually something that they need to act
What
upon.
about the man who embroidered an M? Did he take
obviously a hideously violent man. There are those in all
if you go
types
through
of
if
society.
you go through the transcripts of most of these court cases, they make comments about the girls being little white slags, about them being cheap and the way they dress, all coming from cultural differences. Okay, all of the comments for example, let me give you another example. There was a Somalian in the Bristol rape case who said that it was his religious duty to do what he done. So it has again.
What's your sort of ultimate aim?
my ultimate aim. I would love to never talk about any of these issues again.
How's that come about?
I'd love to be in the I'd love to just be going out working hard and progressing. But unfortunately,
Where do we get to? Where do we get to that? What point do we have to reach when you can stop talking about this? What needs to happen?
in the last 12 months, there have been 4 successful terrorist attacks in our country and 10 stopped. Just in the last 12 months. Okay. The terrorism arrests and the terrorism arrest rate goes up 60% each year. The grooming cases that are currently running now are across this country. The hatred that ISIS fires, all of these problems, I'd love to be in a position where I didn't have to talk about these things again. But quite frankly, I have 3 children, and I owe it to my children.
So where do we? How do we get to the place?
How do we get there?
What do you? What's the pathway to that? I mean, I can see what you're saying. You're saying let's make sure that there are no more terrorist attacks on the UK.
I'd love UKIP to get in government, and then they could start putting in some policies. For example, why is Saudi Arabia funding schools in London? Why is one of the most barbaric human rights violations country in the world?
Who funds you?
Who funds me?
Yeah.
So before the English Defence League,
Yeah.
before I set up the English Defence League, I had 7 properties and 2 successful businesses.
Yeah.
I had a plumbing business, which employed 7 people.
Yeah.
And then when I started the English Defence League, the police and the state, which is what they've done, is
Yeah.
come cracking down on everything and try to destroy and ruin everything. Currently, I work as a journalist, and people sign up to give me support.
What about Steve Bannon?
Steve Bannon, I've never even met Steve Bannon or had a conversation with him in my life.
Have you not?
No, never.
Are you going to? He's described as the backbone of British society.
I'm very grateful for that comment, and
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people are looking at British leaders, and especially the journalists and the media, and they see them as part of the problem. And this is what we've seen in America.
Would you take funds from Steve Bannon? He's a very wealthy man.
Steve Bannon has not offered me funds, so it's a ridiculous.
He's not. Well, it's not. He might offer you funds. He's a big fan, obviously.
To be honest, I don't think I need funds. The work I want to do next is to reach out to the victims and families of these grooming scandals. And what I mainly want to do, which will probably get me put in prison on Thursday anyway, is I want to find all the people who let it happen. All the people that there's evidence on. For example, there's a woman in Oxford who, I think she took a £250,000 payoff. She knew what was happening to those girls in Oxford. She's now in charge of visit tourism for Oxfordshire.
I think. Yeah, well, I've got no evidence, and you've got not providing any evidence to back up that claim.
I'd love to.
But so you wouldn't take funds from Bannon or an alt-right organisation?
I'll just be completely upfront. I've had 2 best-selling books in the last 2 years. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have another best-selling book at the end of the year.
That's where you get your funds from.
I won't need to take funds
from writing books. And you wouldn't get behind a movement that Bannon was trying to set up in the UK, because there are, Raheem Kassim is very close with him, and
I
very
think
close
Raheem
with
Kassim
UKIP,
is brilliant,
and he's been behind your campaign, and he's talked about creating. I've spoken to him about it, creating a movement behind you. You're not up for that.
I haven't had a conversation with anyone about that.
Really? You spoke to me about it.
I spoke to you about it.
No. Raheem spoke to me about it.
Okay, well, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Okay, I come out of prison however many weeks ago in not a good place, and I've been trying to get myself back to normal, and that's pretty hard when I'm preparing in 2 days to be put back in prison. So I've not been in a position to meet, speak, talk, or plan anything, and that's just the truth. Unfortunately, I've had to be seeing doctors and medical advice on the fact that of the consequences of what's happened in my last prison. So I'm not in a position now to make plans for anything that I'll be doing, because I wouldn't want to go out. I'm not in that right frame of mind.
How are you feeling about the prospect of going back to prison?
I think that I'm going to stand on my convictions, and I'm going to express that this is a fact again. I was sent to prison for breaching Section 4 reporting restriction order. That same weekend, 3 national newspapers breached the same order. One newspaper breached 2 Section 4 orders. When they were made aware, and I've got all this evidence in my transcripts from my court case, when they were made aware that they breached the order, one of the newspapers just didn't care. They refused to remove their thing. Now, many people have committed the same so-called crime that I've committed. None of them have faced prison or been convicted or even arrested. I have already spent 2.5 months on solitary confinement for you're a journalist, yeah? Section 4 court order, under the law, when you read the contempt laws, the judge has no power to put reporting restrictions on information that's already in the public domain. Everything I said outside that court was in the public domain. Okay?
You weren't supposed to be there, were you? Because you had
Why not?
you had a restriction on you going to those from your
No, I
previous
didn't.
case, from,
No, I didn't
from
have
the
a
Canterbury case.
No, I didn't. That's a lie. No, I didn't.
Well, that's been widely reported that
But
you had a restriction.
It's
on
also
you weren't allowed.
it was also widely reported that I pled guilty. It's a lie. Okay.
No, I know that's not the case. But you did have a restriction on you.
No, I didn't have a restriction
from the previous case.
No, I had a committal for contempt of court. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, for me to stand outside a courtroom, this is a free country, and I'm a free man. Okay. And if I stick within the law, which if you read the law, the judge has no power to put a reporting restriction on information that's in the public domain. I knew when I stood outside that courtroom, I knew the verdicts of the first part of the trial, and I knew lots of the ins and outs of the trial. I never spoke about any of them. I didn't assume guilt. Went out of my way to make sure I made people aware that they were innocent until proven guilty. I done nothing wrong, and I've spent. And in fact,
what do you think is going to happen though? What do you think is going to happen? Actually, I shouldn't have asked that.
No, that's right. I think on Friday morning I'll be waking up in prison. I think, look, it's a fact that multiple reporters breached the same order the same weekend, and none of them have faced prosecution. Now, justice is supposed to be blind; it's not going to be deaf and dumb. Okay, I am being prosecuted because I'm Tommy Robinson. Nothing else.
Couple of quick fire questions. What do you think of Putin?
What do I think of Putin?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't research Russia. No, I don't.
Not your thing.
No.
You've met Theresa May. What do you think of her?
What do I think of Theresa May? She can't dance. I think she's a robot. I think that Theresa May.
We could all come to that.
Yeah. I had 20 minutes with Theresa May.
Yeah, I know you did. Yeah, when she was Home Secretary.
When she was Home Secretary, and everything I warned her about. I actually went on about Luton's Islamic Centre, yeah, guess where Khalid Massoud? Was that the terrorist on Westminster Bridge?
Yeah.
So guess where? I specifically, in my meeting with her, begged her for help in Luton, yeah, as Home Secretary. I said, this mosque, this Luton Islamic Centre, and I listed all the things. Khalid Massoud worked at that mosque.
Right.
Everything I warned her about has come into fruition. And now that leader, who was part of my Luton in Harmony, the reason why I was so concerned was because I knew and understood what that mosque was about, and they were part of my council.
Yeah.
They're part of all the Luton in Harmony. You know, we need all diversity is stronger together. And I knew that they're smiling, like the imam done to you at the Finsbury Park Mosque. They're smiling and shake your hand the whole time they're working against it.
Have you ever met like Abu Hamza or Omar Bakri or any of these guys?
No, so their head office was in my hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Omar Bakri, all of them were positioned in my hometown before I knew what Islam was. They were promoting hate. Many of them, it's like many of their, even Saif al-Islam, Saif al-Islam, who's one of the main leaders. He's getting out of jail soon. Anjem Chowdhury's about to be released from prison.
Yeah.
How? We're at war. Whether you like it or not, if our security services didn't prevent the bombings, then every single month last year, something would have been blown up, football stadiums, shopping centres. Now, we're at war. So the sooner we accept we're at war, and these men who are promoting the war against us.
But that's why you've got to not accept the interpretation that they have of the Quran. I mean, I've met Omar Bakri. I interviewed him in Beirut, and he's a very, very different character to the guy who runs Finsbury Park Mosque. I can tell you that. Very different. And his interpretation of the Quran is hateful.
No,
Omar Bakri is obvious. It seeps out of every pore.
But then you have some that do it behind a smoke screen. Yeah, some that are, like for example, Kadir Bask. Up until now, he's been exposed. Khalid Massoud's working man. Now he's been exposed. Before he was exposed, he stood on my local TV all the time, smiling, saying, "Oh, come and have coffee with us." And the whole time, he's promoting pure intolerance and hatred. So what I'm saying is, with Islam and understanding who Muhammad was, my biggest problem is understanding who Muhammad was. He was an immoral, warlord, barbarian.
I'm just trying to get to where,
rapist.
just sort of, I know we've gone a long time, but just trying to get where you are at with Muslims, because you're saying, oh, you can't trust these guys, they're two-faced. It's effectively what you're saying.
I didn't say
But,
that.
well, you did. You said there's the behind the smoke screen guy.
There are.
Yeah,
There are.
but you've got
There's
Muslim friends. You've got.
Yeah, they're just normal lads. Look,
Sure.
the majority of Muslims in the UK, what I have a problem is when they start following the literal word of their scripture, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
When they want to live as Muhammad did, we have a problem. The reason why is because he killed people, he murdered people, he was a barbarian. Now, the majority of Muslims don't even pick up the Quran, read the Quran, or go to mosque. The majority, they might go to mosque when it's Ramadan. That's the majority. Yeah? That's the majority. What I'm saying is I do have a problem, and I think that we should all be aware of the intolerance, the violence, and the hatred that comes from the scripture of Islam. And we must be aware of it. There's 1400 years of history we can look at that has seen complete war.
Well, we've sparred on that already. Andy, is there anything else you think we need to cover?
No, I'm perfectly happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, Tommy. That was
All
really
right.
interesting. Thank you, mate.
we'll see what you do with your editing.
Well, we didn't throw you any clips or anything, did we?
Jason? No, you just put the clips in your show, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, sure.
You'll edit the clips in.
Well,
Or is that just going to be an interview, or are you going to put all clips in?
we'll definitely use the stuff of you coming out of prison.
Yeah.
Give me 2 minutes.
Not many clips, just many in the interview.
How many minutes was it? Oh, an hour and 50.